In Seacliff Harbor, Florida, 7 arrogant whalers rolled into Anchor Point Marina looking for amusement. They found Captain Sarah Mitchell instead. They saw a quiet charter boat operator. They didn't see her 20 years of submarine command. They didn't see her classified deep-sea missions. They didn't see what was coming. What happened next would sweep across coastal communities like a tidal wave, a viral video showing how one woman transformed a gang of reckless wheelers into guardians of maritime safety. But the footage didn't tell the whole story. This isn't just about a former submarine commander who humbled 7 troublemakers in 3 minutes. This is about how that moment launched a movement. This is about how rivals became allies. This is about how one stand against maritime bullying changed countless lives. Before we dive deeper, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow we've saved something extraordinary for you. The salt breeze carried the scent of fish and diesel fuel across Anchor Point Marina as Sarah Mitchell secured the mooring lines of her charter boat, Second Wind. Her movements were precise, measured, born from decades of naval discipline. Her graying hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her captain's cap worn with quiet authority. Nothing about her suggested anything more than a local fishing guide in a busy Florida harbor. Martha Reeves watched from the bait and tackle shop, wiping down fishing rods she'd been organizing for the past 10 minutes. After 3 years of having the captain slip next to her shop, the older woman had learned to read the subtle signs. The way Sarah's eyes constantly scanned the waterline, how she always positioned her boat for quick departure, the slight tension in her shoulders when unfamiliar vessels approached the marina. "Need another rod, Mr. Thompson?" Sarah's voice was calm, but carried across the dock, already reaching for his preferred medium-action spinning rod before he could answer. She'd memorized every regular client's preferences, their fishing styles, their stories. Mr. Thompson came every Wednesday at dawn, ordered the half-day nearshore trip, and always used the same rod setup. "You're a blessing, Sarah," Mr. Thompson smiled, his weathered hands testing the drag just the way she showed him. A young family occupied the benches near the fish cleaning station, the children feeding pellets to the resident pelicans while their mother checked weather reports. Sarah noticed the woman's life jackets already staged by their rental boat, ready for quick access. It was the kind of detail most people wouldn't notice, but Sarah wasn't most people. The rumble of powerful engines cut through the morning calm. The sound of high-performance boats approaching at unnecessary speed changed the atmosphere instantly. 7 members of the Storm Runners recreational boat gang powered into the marina, their massive wakes rocking the moored vessels. Their leader, known simply as Razor, piloted a gleaming 42-foot center console and carried himself with the aggressive confidence of someone used to intimidating others on the water. Martha's hand moved toward the radio behind the counter. Sarah gave her the slightest shake of head. "Not yet." "Well, what do we have here?" Razor's voice boomed across the dock. "Looks like we found ourselves a cozy little spot for some entertainment, boys." The other boaters tensed. Mr. Thompson's hands gripped his rod tighter. The mother by the fish cleaning station quietly gathered her children's pellet bags. "Don't leave on our account," one of the Storm Runners called out. "We're just here to make some friendly conversation." Sarah continued adjusting the fenders on her charter boat, her movements unhurried but precise. She tracked the wheelers' positions in the reflection of her boat's polished hull. Razor at the fuel dock, his second in command, blocking the main. Upia, the others spreading out in a pattern that spoke of practiced intimidation. "Hey there, Captain Quiet," Razor's voice carried across the water. "Already need your slip pulled in over here. We got some real boats to dock." Sarah turned, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of professional neutrality. Years of submarine command had taught her to assess threats while maintaining absolute control. Every instinct honed through countless classified missions was now focused on protecting the civilians in this small marina. "What can I help you with?" Her voice was calm, measured. Razor strode down the dock, deliberately crowding her space. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Not feeling social? Maybe we need to help you find your voice." The mother, with her children, tried to edge past toward the parking lot. One of the storm runners moved to block their path. "Please step aside." Sarah's voice carried an authority that made several heads turn. It wasn't the voice of a charter captain anymore. Razor's eyes narrowed. "Or what? You going to make us, sweetheart?" Sarah set down her clipboard, her movements deliberate. "Sir, these people are trying to leave. I suggest you let them pass." "You suggest?" Razor laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. Something in Sarah's stance had changed, subtle but significant. "You don't know who we are, do you?" "I know exactly who you are," Sarah replied. "The question is, do you know who I am?" The tension at the dock reached breaking point. Razor reached for Sarah's arm, his fingers barely brushing her sleeve before everything changed. Razor's grip never found its target. Sarah's movement was fluid, economic, a redirect that left the larger man stumbling backward into his own fender. The professional calm never left her face, but her posture had transformed. Gone was the quiet charter captain. In her place stood someone entirely different. "That's one mistake," Sarah said, her voice carrying the same tone she'd used, commanding. "Nuclear submarines. Let's not make another." Razor's second in command, a lean man with a shark tattoo on his neck, stepped forward. "Boss, something ain't right about this one. The way she moves." The mother and her children had reached the parking lot. Protected by Sarah's positioning, Mr. Thompson sat very still, his veteran's instinct recognizing a fellow service member. Martha watched from the bait shop, phone in hand, but her finger hadn't dialed yet. She'd seen that look in Sarah's eyes before. "Nobody makes a fool of me in my marina," Razor snarled, lunging forward with a shove that would have sent most people flying into the harbor. Sarah wasn't most people. She redirected his momentum like she was steering through Arctic currents, letting him stumble past her, his designer boat shoes squeaking on the wet dock. "Your marina?" Sarah's voice remained measured. "This port belongs to the community. These people you're threatening, they're not your targets, they're my responsibility." Two more storm runners moved to flank her. Sarah adjusted her stance slightly, keeping all opponents in view. Her breathing remained steady, hands relaxed at her sides. The training that had kept her alive through 2 decades of submarine command was about to serve a different purpose. "Who the hell are you?" Razor demanded, real uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Someone who's given you 3 chances to walk away." Sarah's eyes tracked every movement. "You won't get a 4th. The shark-tattooed wheeler reached for something in his pocket. Sarah moved with the precision born from years of crisis management in underwater vessels. A simple wrist lock, applied with perfect control, left him kneeling, his switchblade clattering harmlessly across the dock. "That's 2, Sarah counted calmly. Razor watched his lieutenant neutralized by this seemingly ordinary boat captain. Something shifted in his expression, the first crack in his intimidating facade. "Submarine Command!" Mr. Thompson spoke up suddenly, recognition lighting his eyes. "The way you handle yourself, you were sub-command, weren't you?" The marina fell silent. Razor looked between Mr. Thompson and Sarah, reassessing everything he thought he knew about this confrontation. 20 years, Sarah confirmed quietly. "Now I run fishing charters instead of running submarines. But some things don't change, like protecting people who can't protect themselves." The remaining storm runners looked to Razor for direction, their usual playbook shattered by this unexpected revelation. "You think being some Navy hotshot makes you better than us?" Razor's words carried less conviction now. "No," Sarah replied. "I think choosing to protect rather than intimidate makes someone better. It's a choice you could make too." Martha finally set down the phone, moving to stand near Sarah. "I hired her 3 years ago," she announced to the silent marina. best slipholder we've ever had. Not because she can handle trouble, but because she tries to prevent it first. Red and blue lights began flashing in the parking lot. Someone had called the harbor patrol, but Sarah knew the next few moments would determine more than just today's outcome. Your crew is watching, she told Razor quietly. Right now, you have a choice. Come off as the tough guy who got put down by a charter captain, or as the leader who was smart enough to recognize when a situation needed to change. Razor looked at his crew, then at the patrol boats approaching. The marina security cameras blinked silently overhead, recording everything. "Stand down," he ordered finally. "We're leaving." "Boss?" The shark-tattooed man looked confused. "I said stand down." Razor's voice carried authority, but something else too, the first hint of reflection. As the storm runners powered up their engines under the watchful eyes of Harbor Patrol, Razor paused at the helm. "This isn't over," he said, but the threat had been replaced by something closer to curiosity. "You're right," Sarah agreed. "It's just beginning." Martha started brewing fresh coffee as the patrol officers took statements. The regular clients looked at Sarah with new eyes, but she had already resumed checking her fishing gear, her movements once again those of a simple charter captain. Mr. Thompson shook his head in wonderment. "All this time we thought we were just getting good fishing tips. We never knew we had a guardian angel in a captain's cap." "Not an angel," Sarah corrected gently. "Just someone who found a different way to serve." Outside, Razor sat in his boat, watching his reflection in the calm harbor water. His hand touched his phone, then withdrew. Something had changed today, though he couldn't yet name it. The morning charter preparations at Anchor Point Marina continued like any other, but everyone present knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a confrontation, but a moment when the possibility of change hung in the air like the lingering scent of salt and hope. Razor's grip never found its target. Sarah's movement was fluid, economic, a redirect that left the larger man stumbling backward into his own fender. The professional calm never left her face, but her posture had transformed. Gone was the quiet charter captain. In her place stood someone entirely different. "That's one mistake," Sarah said, her voice carrying the same tone she'd used commanding nuclear submarines. "Let's not make another." Razor's second in command, a lean man with a shark tattoo on his neck, stepped forward. "Boss, something ain't right about this one. The way she moves." The mother and her children had reached the parking lot, protected by Sarah's positioning. Mr. Thompson sat very still, his veteran's instinct recognizing a fellow service member. Martha watched from the bait shop, phone in hand, but her finger hadn't dialed yet. She'd seen that look in Sarah's eyes before. "Nobody makes a fool of me in my marina," Razor snarled, lunging forward with a shove that would have sent most people flying into the harbor. Sarah wasn't most people. She redirected his momentum like she was steering through Arctic currents, letting him stumble past her, his designer boat shoes squeaking on the wet dock. "Your marina?" Sarah's voice remained measured. "This port belongs to the community. These people you're threatening, they're not your targets. They're my responsibility." Two more storm runners moved to flank her. Sarah adjusted her stance slightly, keeping all opponents in view. Her breathing remained steady, hands relaxed at her sides. The training that had kept her alive through 2 decades of submarine command was about to serve a different purpose. "Who the hell are you?" Razor demanded, real uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Someone who's given you 3 chances to walk away." Sarah's eyes tracked every movement. "You won't get a 4th. The shark-tattooed wheeler reached for something in his pocket. Sarah moved with the precision born from years of crisis management in underwater vessels. A simple wrist lock applied with perfect control left him kneeling, his switchblade clattering harmlessly across the dock. "That's 2. Sarah counted calmly. Razor watched his lieutenant neutralized by this seemingly ordinary boat captain. Something shifted in his expression, the first crack in his intimidating facade. "Submarine Command," Mr. Thompson spoke up suddenly, recognition lighting his eyes. "The way you handle yourself, you were sub-command, weren't you?" The mariner fell silent. Razor looked between Mr. Thompson and Sarah, reassessing everything he thought he knew about this confrontation. 20 years, Sarah confirmed quietly. "Now I run fishing charters instead of running submarines. But some things don't change, like protecting people who can't protect themselves." The remaining storm runners looked to Razor for direction, their usual playbook shattered by this unexpected revelation. "You think being some Navy hotshot makes you better than us?" Razor's words carried less conviction now. "No," Sarah replied. "I think choosing to protect rather than intimidate makes someone better. It's a choice you could make too." Martha finally set down the phone, moving to stand near Sarah. "I hired her 3 years ago," she announced to the silent mariner. "Best slipholder we've ever had. Not because she can handle trouble, but because she tries to prevent it first." Red and blue lights began flashing in the parking lot. Someone had called the harbor patrol, but Sarah knew the next few moments would determine more than just today's outcome. "Your crew is watching," she told Razor quietly. "Right now you have a choice. Come off as the tough guy who got put down by a charter captain, or as the leader who was smart enough to recognize when a situation needed to change." Razor looked at his crew, then at the patrol boats approaching. The marina security cameras blinked silently overhead, recording everything. "Stand down," he ordered finally. "We're leaving." "Boss?" The shark-tattooed man looked confused. "I said stand down." Razor's voice carried authority, but something else too, the first hint of reflection. As the storm runners powered up their engines under the watchful eyes of harbor patrol, Razor paused at the helm. "This isn't over," he said, but the threat had been replaced by something closer to curiosity. "You're right," Sarah agreed. "It's just beginning." Martha started brewing fresh coffee as the patrol officers took statements. The regular clients looked at Sarah with new eyes, but she had already resumed checking her fishing gear, her movements once again those of a simple charter captain. Mr. Thompson shook his head in wonderment. "All this time we thought we were just getting good fishing tips. We never knew we had a guardian angel in a captain's cap." "Not an angel," Sarah corrected gently. "Just someone who found a different way to serve." Outside, Razor sat in his boat, watching his reflection in the calm harbor water. His hand touched his phone, then withdrew. Something had changed today, though he couldn't yet name it. The morning charter preparations at Anchor Point Marina continued like any other, but everyone present knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a confrontation, but a moment when the possibility of change hung in the air like the lingering scent of salt and hope. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sunrise painted Seacliff Harbor in shades of gold as Sarah Mitchell arrived at the Maritime Veteran Support Center well before her morning charters, unlocking the door of the converted warehouse where she spent her early hours. The security footage from the marina had already started circulating online, though Sarah hadn't watched it herself. The center was quiet this early, just the way she liked it. Photos of service members lined the walls, along with notices for maritime training programs and support group schedules. This was her other life, the one where she didn't have to pretend to be just a charter captain. Diana Walsh's truck pulled into the parking lot right on schedule. The center's coordinator stepped out, carrying 2 thermoses and a concerned expression. "Saw the video?" Diana said, handing Sarah a coffee. "Half the town's talking about it. You okay?" I'm fine. Sarah, check the morning's paperwork, but we might need to prepare for more attention than usual. Before Diana could respond, a high-performance boat rumbled up to the center's private dock. Not the aggressive approach of yesterday's gang, but the uncertain idle of someone who wasn't sure they should be there. Through the window, Sarah saw one of the younger storm runners, Jack Torres, according to his registration papers. "We're not open yet," Diana called out, but Sarah held up a hand. "Let him come in." Jack entered cautiously, his designer boating clothes marking him as one of Razor's crew, but his body language spoke of internal conflict. Dark circles under his eyes suggested a sleepless night. "Captain," he addressed Sarah using her naval rank, "I need to talk to you." "I'm not a captain anymore," Sarah replied. "Just Sarah is fine." "The thing is," Jack glanced at Diana, then back to Sarah, "Razor's different this morning, never seen him like this. He's got a daughter, Emma, 14 years old. She saw the video, called him crying, asked him why he was acting like the bullies who harass her at school." The morning sun streamed through the center's windows, catching the salt spray in its beams. Sarah waited, letting Jack find his words. "Most of us," he continued, "we're not what you think. Razor included. We just lost our way somewhere." Diana moved to speak, but Sarah's slight headshake stopped her. This was a moment that needed space to breathe. "I was in the Navy too," Jack said suddenly. 5 years submarine service. Came home, couldn't fit in anywhere. The storm runners, they felt like a crew again, but last night watching you," he trailed off. "Watching me what?" Sarah prompted gently. "You had all that training, all that power, but you chose to protect instead of destroy, like my old XO would have done." Jack's hands fidgeted with his boat keys. "Made me remember who I used to be." Outside, more boats approached. Jack tensed. But these weren't storm runners. 3 veterans on various fishing vessels pulled up for their regular morning coffee group. "See them?" Sarah nodded toward the window. "They found their brotherhood too, but they found it in helping, not hurting." The veterans noticed Jack's storm runner's jacket, their expressions hardening, but Jack wasn't looking at them. He was staring at the wall of photos, particularly one showing a submarine crew conducting a coastal cleanup. "Razor's at the marina," Jack said finally. "Sitting in his truck across the street, been there since dawn. His kid Emma's inside having breakfast with Martha. Think he's trying to figure something out." Diana exchanged looks with Sarah. This was unexpected territory for both of them. "You know what the hardest part of submarine service is?" Sarah asked, moving to the coffee station. "Not the isolation or the pressure. It's knowing how to resurface, knowing how to come back to the surface world." She poured 3 cups of coffee. "Take one to Razor. Tell him if he wants to talk, I'm here until noon. Tell him to bring Emma." Jack accepted the coffee cups carefully, as if they were more valuable than his boat's keys. "What if he says no? Then we try again tomorrow." Sarah replied, "Change doesn't happen in one tide, but it does happen." After Jack left, Diana turned to Sarah. "You think this is wise? They're still the storm runners." "No," Sarah corrected, watching Jack's boat pull away. "They're sailors who forgot who they were. Maybe it's time someone reminded them." The morning progressed with its usual rhythm of veteran support groups and maritime training sessions, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Word had spread about the Marina incident, bringing new faces to the center. Some came out of curiosity, others seeking something they couldn't name. At 11:45, a truck pulled into the parking lot. Razor stepped out, still wearing his storm runner's jacket, but somehow looking smaller in the morning light. Behind him, Emma clutched a marine biology textbook decorated with dolphin stickers. "Your coffee's getting cold," Sarah called from the doorway. Razor looked at his daughter, then back at Sarah. The man who had tried to intimidate a marina full of people now seemed unsure of his next move. "Emma has some questions," he said finally, "about what it means to be strong. The right way." Sarah held the door open wider. "Then let's talk about strength, the real kind." As Razor and Emma entered the Maritime Veterans Support Center, the morning sun caught the edge of his Storm Runner's patch, a circling shark in mid-strike. But for the first time, he looked at it with something like uncertainty, as if wondering if it still fit who he wanted to be. The Maritime Veterans Support Center's meeting room felt different with Razor and Emma sitting at the worn conference table. Emma's notebook lay open, covered in careful drawings of marine life. Razor sat uncomfortably in a chair meant for group therapy, his designer boat shoes squeaking against the floor. "Mom left 3 years ago," Emma explained, answering Sarah's gentle questions. "Said Dad was never going to change, but I remember how he used to be before he started running with the Storm Runners. He taught boating safety courses at the community college." Razor's jaw tightened, but he let his daughter continue. This was the first time he'd really heard her perspective on what their life had become. "Tell me about the safety courses," Sarah prompted, noting how Razor's expression softened at the memory. "He was good at it." Emma's voice carried pride. "People used to say he was the best instructor they'd ever had. Then the college cut the program and—" She trailed off, looking at her father. "And I got bitter," Razor finished. "Started running with people who made me feel powerful instead of useful." The door opened as Diana brought in coffee. Behind her, Jack Torres and 3 other Storm Runners hovered uncertainly in the hallway. Sarah nodded, inviting them in. "Your guys have been waiting outside for an hour," Sarah told Razor. "Might as well let them hear this too." The Wheelers filed in, taking seats around the table. Emma continued sketching, adding details to her marine life drawings while the adults talked. "Most of us served," Jack spoke up. "Razor was Navy like me. Pete over there was Coast Guard. Mike was Maritime. Academy. We all struggled after leaving the service. The Storm Runners gave us structure," Razor added. "Brotherhood, something to believe in. Didn't matter that it was the wrong something." Sarah stood, moving to the wall of photos. She pointed to one, showing her submarine crew conducting a rescue mission in rough seas. "See this mission? We saved a fishing crew that had lost power. 3 other boats had passed them by, but our crew couldn't do that. Our training meant we had responsibility." Emma looked up from her drawing. "Like the Marine rescue teams," she said suddenly. "Dad used to volunteer with them. You taught me about their signals, remember?" The room fell silent as her words sank. Razor looked at his daughter's drawings with new understanding. The marine life wasn't just swimming, it was working together, creating patterns of protection. "Maybe that's what we need to be," Jack suggested quietly. "Not Storm Runners anymore, something new." Before anyone could respond, raised voices came from the front office. Diana went to check, returning with a concerned expression. "We've got protesters," she reported. "Some of the local boat owners. They're saying we're harboring troublemakers." Razor started to rise, anger flashing in his eyes. But Sarah's quiet voice stopped him. "What would a rescue team do?" He sank back into his chair, thinking. "A rescue team would prove them wrong," he said finally. "Not with intimidation, with action." Emma tore a page from her notebook, sliding it across the table to Sarah. The drawing showed boats forming a protective circle, but now there was text beneath it. "Coastal Guardians, protecting and serving." "Dad used to protect others," she explained, "teaching people, helping them. Maybe the Storm Runners could do that instead of scaring people." Razor picked up the drawing, studying it. The man who had tried to intimidate a marina full of people just yesterday now looked at his daughter's artwork like it held the answers he'd been seeking. "It won't be easy," Sarah cautioned. "The community won't trust you overnight. You'll have to earn it wave by wave, like training a rescue team." Razor nodded. "As many times as it takes." The protesters' voices faded as they dispersed, but their presence had sparked something. The wheelers around the table sat straighter, as if feeling the weight of potential change. "I still know all the safety courses," Razor said slowly. "And some of our guys are mechanics, good ones. We could help veterans who need boat repair." "Train new maritime rescue volunteers," Jack finished. "Teach maintenance classes, give them something productive to focus on." Diana, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "The center's been trying to start a veteran maritime support program. Never had the expertise to get it running. Until now," Sarah added, meeting Razor's eyes. Emma beamed, adding final touches to her Guardian design. "See, Dad, you can still be a leader, just leading towards something good this time." The morning light had shifted, casting long shadows across the conference table. Where Razor had entered looking uncertain, he now sat with purpose. The other wheelers leaned forward, engaged in discussion about logistics, training programs, community outreach. "First step," Sarah announced, "is showing Seacliff Harbor that you're serious about change. Actions, not words." Razor stood, his decision made. "Jack, get the word out. Meeting at the clubhouse tonight. Anyone who wants to be part of this Coastal Guardians program needs to understand what it means. No more intimidation, no more territory disputes. We're going to protect these waters, not dominate them." As the wheelers filed out, energized with new purpose, Emma hung back. She placed her Guardian drawing on the center's bulletin board, right next to Sarah's submarine crew photo. "Sometimes the strongest thing isn't saving people," she said wisely. "Sometimes it's helping them save themselves." The Stormrunners Clubhouse had stood as a symbol of maritime intimidation in Seacliff Harbor's exclusive yacht basin for 4 years. Tonight its character changed with every piece of aggressive memorabilia the members carried out. Razor supervised the transformation, watching his men take down trophies of past conflicts and replace them with Emma's Coastal Guardian designs. "Put the training equipment over there," Razor directed, pointing to a cleared wall. "The safety gear goes by the windows. We need good visibility for the certification classes." Jack Torres worked alongside several others, converting the bar area into a classroom space. The liquor bottles disappeared, replaced by marine safety manuals and navigation charts. Every surface was scrubbed, every dark corner illuminated. "Some of the guys aren't happy about this," Jack mentioned quietly to Razor. "About 12 didn't show up tonight." "Their choice," Razor replied, but his expression showed concern. Those 12 represented the hardcore element of the Stormrunners, the ones most resistant to change. Sarah and Diana arrived with a group of veterans from the support center. The wheelers tensed initially, old habits dying hard, but Razor's firm nod set them at ease. "First impression matters," Sarah reminded them, surveying the space. "Tomorrow morning we've got 8 veterans coming for basic boat handling training. They need to feel safe here." "They will," Razor assured her, then raised his voice to address the room. "Listen up. From now on, this isn't just our space. It belongs to every veteran who needs it. We're not Stormrunners anymore. We're Coastal Guardians, and that means something different." The sound of high-performance engines approaching caused everyone to pause. Through the windows, they saw members of the Wave Breakers, a rival wheeler gang, pulling up to the dock. Their leader, Jake Morrison, killed his engines, but kept his hand near his vest pocket. "Razor Storm," he called out. "We need to talk about these rumors we're hearing." Razor started toward the door, but Sarah's voice stopped him. "Remember who you're choosing to be." He nodded, then stepped outside, leaving his keys behind. "Yeah." Other Coastal Guardians watched anxiously through the windows. "What happened to you?" Jake demanded. "First, you let some charter captain take you down. Now you're running some kind of charity." "Not charity," Razor replied calmly. "Purpose. Most of these veterans are just like us, Jake. Looking for something to belong to, something worth fighting." "Afore you've gone soft," Jake spat, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "No, Emma's voice rang out as she emerged from the clubhouse. "My dad's gone strong, real strong, not fake strong." Jake stared at the 14-year-old girl standing fearlessly before a dozen tough wheelers. Behind her, the newly christened Coastal Guardians stood ready, but not threatening. "You remember why you started boating, Jake?" Razor asked quietly. "Because I do. You were Coast Guard, weren't you, before all this?" Jake's tough facade cracked slightly. "That was a different life. Doesn't have to be. Tomorrow morning we're teaching boat handling to veterans who can't afford lessons, could use someone with rescue swimmer experience." The tension held for a long moment, then broke as one of Jake's younger riders spoke up. "I wouldn't mind learning proper rescue techniques, boss. My jet ski's been feeling squirrely anyway." Inside, Sarah watched the exchange with Diana. "This is the real test," she murmured. "Not just changing themselves, but influencing others." The wave breakers eventually powered up their engines and left without incident, but Jake's parting words hung in the air. "This isn't over, Razor. Seacliff Harbor isn't big enough for two different kinds of boating clubs." As the evening progressed, more changes took shape. A schedule board went up listing safety courses, rescue training, and support group meetings. The Coastal Guardians' new patches were simple but powerful. A lighthouse beam wrapped around a rescue ring, Martha called. Diana announced, checking her phone. "Anchor Point Marina is offering free slip space to any veteran who shows up for tomorrow's class." "The marina's becoming neutral water," Jack observed, "like those ports in old naval treaties where everyone could dock in peace." Razor supervised the final preparations, then gathered everyone for a last word. "Tomorrow we show Seacliff Harbor what we've become. Some won't believe it, some won't want to, but every veteran we help, every boat we maintain, every life we make safer, that's how we prove ourselves." Emma, who had been adding finishing touches to the walls, stepped back to admire their work. "Dad," she called out, "can I bring my marine biology books tomorrow? I want to teach the veterans' kids about ocean conservation while their parents learn about boating." The question caught Razor off guard. The tough wheeler leader blinked rapidly, nodding to hide his emotion. "Yeah, baby, that's a real good idea." Later, as the transformed clubhouse stood quiet under the stars, Sarah found Razor sitting alone, staring at his old Stormrunner's patch. "Having doubts?" she asked. "No," he replied slowly. "Just thinking about all the time I wasted trying to earn respect through fear. My daughter's shown more real strength in 2 days than I have in 4 years. That's because she sees you clearly," Sarah said. "Not who you became, but who you really are." A text lit up Razor's phone. Jake Morrison calling an emergency meeting. Of all local boating clubs, the message was clear. Not everyone was ready to accept the Coastal Guardians' transformation. "Tomorrow is going to be interesting," Razor sighed. "Tomorrow is going to be necessary," Sarah corrected. "Change doesn't come without resistance. The question is, are you ready to rise above it?" Razor looked around the transformed clubhouse, at the spaces cleared for training instead of intimidation, at his daughter's guardian designs spreading hope across the walls. "We're ready," he answered, and for the first time in years, he felt the truth of his words. Dawn broke over the Coastal Guardians clubhouse as Razor and his crew made final preparations. Safety equipment gleamed on newly organized racks, and the morning light caught the fresh paint on the walls. 10 boats in various states of repair waited in the maintenance bay, each representing a veteran in need of maritime training. The first arrival wasn't a veteran, but Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman clutching the registration papers of a weathered fishing boat. "It was my husband's," she explained, her voice quavering. "Been sitting in dry dock since he passed. I can't bear to sell it." Razor approached carefully, his imposing frame softened by genuine interest. "Coast Guard veteran?" he asked, noting the service emblem on the boat's bow. "2 tours," she replied. "He used to teach me about navigation, but I've forgotten so much." "Then, let's help you remember. Razor replied, guiding her to one of the training stations. Sometimes keeping their memory alive means keeping what they loved running. More boats began arriving. Veterans from the support center, families bringing vessels that hadn't run in years, even a few curious onlookers. Jack Torres greeted each one, his former intimidating demeanor replaced by earnest welcome. Emma had set up her marine biology corner, quickly drawing in the veterans' children with books and tide pool specimens. "We're learning about ocean conservation," she announced, "for when your parents join the Coastal Guardians family." Sarah watched from the entrance as Diana checked in newcomers. The transformation was promising, but she noticed tension in the parking lot. Members of 3 other boating clubs observed from their vessels, their expressions ranging from skeptical to hostile. "Incoming," Diana murmured as Jake Morrison's wave breakers roared up, 15 strong. "Here for the class?" Razor asked calmly, wiping grease from his hands. "Here to remind you what you're throwing away," Jake growled. "Brotherhood, respect, territory, everything we built." Before Razor could respond, Mrs. Chen stepped forward. "Young man," she addressed Jake, "would you have helped me with Henry's boat? Would your brotherhood have taught me to keep his memory alive?" Jake faltered, caught off guard by the elderly woman's directness. Inside, the first maintenance class was underway. Razor moved between workstations, his expertise evident as he guided veterans through basic repairs. The atmosphere shifted from tense to focused, the shared work building unexpected bridges. "See this bilge pump?" he showed a young female veteran. "Your service skills apply here. Same attention to detail, same need for precision like maintaining ship systems." She nodded, understanding. Emma's marine biology session had evolved into something more. The children were drawing their parents' stories, boats carrying heroes home, dolphins guiding lost sailors. One boy's drawing showed his father, a wheelchair-bound veteran, piloting again. "Dad!" Emma called out. "Can we help make his drawing real?" Razor studied the artwork, then the veteran in question. "We've got experience modifying boats for disabilities. It'll take time, but—" He turned to Jake, still watching from the doorway. "Unless you think that makes us soft." Jake's eyes moved from the drawing to the veteran, then to his own club members. Some were already drifting toward the maintenance bay, their curiosity overcoming their prejudice. "You really think you can change things?" Jake asked, but his tone had shifted from mocking to uncertain. "Already are," Sarah answered, approaching with fresh coffee from the marina. "Question is, do you want to be part of that change or stand against it?" A commotion from the marine biology corner drew everyone's attention. The children had arranged their drawings on the wall, creating a mural of hope and transformation. Veterans and wheelers alike stood silent, seeing their stories through innocent eyes. "You know what?" One of Jake's younger members spoke up. "My grandfather was Navy too. His boat's been sitting in storage since he died. Maybe I could bring it by." The tension cracked further as more wave breakers began asking questions about the program. Jake watched his influence shifting, his certainties crumbling. Anchor Point Marina had become command central for their expanding operations. The usual afternoon lull was filled with coastal guardians and veterans planning their first charity regatta. Emma sat in her usual spot, teaching younger kids about marine conservation while their parents talked logistics. "Look at this," she called out, holding up a child's drawing. It showed the Coastal Guardians leading a parade of boats, but instead of wakes, they left trails of healing waters. "Got the route planned," Jack announced, spreading a nautical chart across the counter. "Hitting 5 veteran centers in 3. Counties already got 30 boats committed." 40, Jake corrected quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "What? Some of my guys? They want to help, if you'll have us." The bell above the marina shop chimed as Mrs. Chen entered, sailing gear replacing her usual sundress. "Make that 41, she announced. "Henry's boat is ready, and so am I." Razor looked around the marina at the mix of leather jackets and veteran patches, at children learning about ocean life, at former enemies planning to sail together. We're going to need a bigger dock. Martha already talked to the yacht club next door. Martha grinned. They're letting us use their slips for event days. Seems someone fixed the owner's daughter's engine for free last week. The news crews outside had captured an unexpected story. Instead of the planned piece about reformed gang members, they witnessed the birth of something larger. Veterans finding new purpose, children bridging divides their parents thought permanent, a community healing itself. Still think we've gone soft? Razor asked Jake as they watched more boats arrive. Think you've gone strong, Jake admitted. Different kind of strong than before, like that submarine commander tried to tell us. Sarah, moving between boats with her usual quiet efficiency, smiled at the conversation. The coastal guardians were becoming exactly what Seacliff Harbour needed, not just a veteran support program, but a bridge between divided parts of the community. Teenage girl in a wave breaker's jacket approached Emma's marine biology table. "Can you teach me about sea turtle rescue too?" she asked hesitantly. "My dad. He's talking about changing our club's name, says maybe it's time for the wave breakers to break new ground." Diana overheard and pulled Sarah aside. "We're going to need more support staff. This is growing faster than we anticipated." "Good problems to have," Sarah replied, watching Razor teach a young veteran the finer points of navigation. The former gang leader moved with the patience of a born instructor, his old aggression transformed into focused teaching. The afternoon sun caught the newly painted Coastal Guardians logo on the clubhouse wall across the marina. Where sharks once signified danger, they now represented protection. Every boat they fixed, every veteran they helped, every barrier they broke down added to the movement, not of intimidation, but of restoration. Outside, the first boats were lining up for the charity regatta. Mark led the formation, his modified vessel a testament to what was possible when people chose to build instead of break. Behind him, a mix of Coastal Guardians and Wavebreakers members checked their radios in unified purpose. "Ready to make some headlines?" Sarah asked Razor as he prepared to lead the fleet. "Ready to make some history," he answered, watching his daughter coordinate a marine life exhibition for their return. The kind Emma can be proud of. 43 boats thundered down Seacliff Harbour's main channel, each crew wearing a small lighthouse patch alongside their original club colours. Mark led the formation on his adapted boat, followed by Razor and Jake, sailing side by side. The charity regatta had drawn more support than anyone expected, but it had also drawn attention from those who preferred the old way of life. "Trouble at checkpoint 2, Jack's voice crackled over the radio. "Remaining storm runners spotted heading that way. Looks like they want to make a statement." Razor's grip tightened on the helm. The checkpoint was at Cedar Point Marine Center, where Emma and other kids were setting up a marine conservation display to welcome the regatta fleet. Diana was there too, coordinating with local veterans. "This is their big play," Sarah's calm voice came through the radio. She was piloting the rear guard, watching their flanks. "How we handle this defines everything we've built." The formation approached Cedar Point, the rumble of their engines, drawing people out to the docks. Ahead, a group of high-performance boats blocked the channel, the hardcore element that had rejected the Coastal Guardians transformation. "Dad," Emma's voice on the radio, "the family's here. They're asking if they should call the Marine Patrol." Razor clicked his radio. "No, we handle this our way, the right way." He turned to Jake. "Ready to prove what kind of leaders we really are?" The formation slowed, but didn't stop. Mark, still in the lead, guided his modified boat forward until he faced the blockade. Behind him, Coastal Guardians and Wavebreakers members moved in perfect formation, their unity a stark contrast to the chaos their opponents represented. "Last chance, Rex!" Razor shouted. Rex, the Stormrunner's new leader. "Come back to what you were, or this gets ugly!" Razor cut his engines, removing his sunglasses. Jake followed suit. The two former rivals now stood together, facing their past. "Look behind you, Rex," Razor called out. "Those kids back there, they're learning about marine conservation while you're out here playing pirate. Those veterans, they're learning to trust the water again. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever been part of." Rex gunned his engines, the roar echoing across the water. "Pretty speech, but we've got 20 boats here saying you don't pass." "Count again," came a new voice. Mrs. Chen piloted through the Guardian formation, her husband's restored fishing boat gleaming behind her. More vessels appeared. Veterans from 3 counties, retired Coast Guard officers, even some of Rex's own people who'd had a change of heart. "Your kids drew this," Mrs. Chen told Rex and his crew, holding up artwork from Emma's class. "While you were planning this showdown, they were learning about how their fathers protected these waters. Protecting the seas, not scarring them." The standoff stretched tight as a mooring line at full strain. Then something unexpected happened. A young storm runner cut his engines, revealing a veteran service flag beneath his club colors. "My son's in that marine biology class," he said quietly. "First time he's been proud to tell his friends what his dad does." One by one, boats pulled away from Rex's blockade. Not all. Some remained clinging to their anger, but enough moved that the message was clear. "Your choice," Razor told the holdouts. "Stay angry, stay stuck, or sail with us. Help build something better." Rex revved his engines in fury, but he was leading fewer than 6 boats now. The channel was clear, and the charity regatta continued. At Cedar Point Marine Center, Emma's conservation display had grown. Children of veterans, former rivals, and worried parents had spent the delay adding to it. The walls were covered with marine life murals, each one telling a story of protection. "This is what they were trying to stop," Diana told the gathered crowd, gesturing to the artwork. "Not a boat parade, hope itself." The event continued, bigger than planned. Local news crews captured veterans teaching water safety to kids, former enemies sharing navigation tips, families reconnecting over shared purpose. But they also captured quieter moments. Razor helping Rex's daughter find her father in the crowd, Jake teaching young boaters about respect instead of intimidation. "You know what really changed?" Mrs. Chen asked Sarah as they watched the scene unfold. "It's not just the Wheelers, it's the whole harbor. We're remembering who we can be." Later at Anchor Point Marina, the expanded Coastal Guardian family gathered to celebrate. The charity regatta had raised funds for veteran boating programs, but it had accomplished something more valuable. It had proven that change, once started, couldn't be stopped by force. "Got something to show you," Jake told Razor, unfolding renovation plans. "Wave Breakers Clubhouse, thinking of some changes. Maybe a classroom space, rescue training area." Razor smiled, recognizing the lighthouse designs in the margins, Emma's influence spreading further. "Dad!" Emma called out excitedly. "Mrs. Chen's teaching us about navigation charts. Did you know her husband mapped safe passages for refugee boats?" The marina hummed with conversation, plans, and possibilities. Even some of Rex's remaining crew had docked quietly, watching from their boats, seeing what they'd fought against with new eyes. "Ready for what comes next?" Sarah asked Razor. "Changes like this, they create ripples." Razor watched his daughter, teaching other kids about marine ecosystems, her Guardian designs now incorporated into both clubs' logos. "Ripples?" he replied. "I'm thinking tsunami." The morning sun hadn't yet touched Seacliff Harbor when Razor found the note on his center console. The handwriting was familiar. Catherine, his ex-wife, had seen the news coverage. She wanted to talk about Emma, about changes, about possibilities. His hands shook slightly as he read, memories of slammed cabin doors and harbor fights echoing. In his mind, the Coastal Guardians clubhouse was already bustling despite the early hour. The safety program had expanded to 3 daily sessions, with veterans from 4 counties now participating. Today brought a new challenge, national media arriving to cover what they called the Seacliff Harbour phenomenon. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Sarah observed, bringing Razor his morning coffee. The former submarine commander had an uncanny ability to read people's stress levels. "Catherine's back in town," Razor replied, showing her the note. "Saw us on the morning news. In Miami." Before Sarah could respond, Jack burst in, his face tight with concern. "Rex's crew hit the Wavebreakers clubhouse last night, trashed the renovation work, left some pretty graphic threats. The timing couldn't have been worse." Representatives from veteran organizations across 3 states were arriving today to learn about expanding the Coastal Guardians program. The news crews were setting up their equipment, and now this. "Call the Harbor Patrol?" Diana asked. Jake shook his head. "You know how Rex operates. No proof, just enough damage to send a message." Diana arrived with more complications. "The regional VA director is coming. Apparently someone's been pushing them to officially partner with us, and..." She hesitated. "Catherine's outside with Emma." The clubhouse fell silent. Through the window they could see Emma hugging her mother while showing her the new Coastal Guardian designs. Catherine looked different, less angry, more uncertain. "I need to handle this," Razor started, but Sarah stopped him. "No, we need to handle all of it together. That's what Coastal Guardians do." Jack Torres organized the first safety class of the day, keeping the program running while the leaders dealt with the mounting challenges. Mrs. Chen had become a regular instructor, her late husband's naval precision living on through her teaching. "Your mom's here?" one of the veterans' kids asked Emma as they set up the marine biology corner. "She saw us on TV," Emma replied carefully, arranging her conservation posters. "Said she didn't recognize Dad anymore, but like in a good way." The news crews captured an unexpected moment as Catherine entered the clubhouse. Instead of the confrontation they'd hoped for, they filmed her watching Razor teach a wheelchair-bound veteran about adapted boat controls. His patience and expertise obvious. "He really has changed," Catherine murmured to Sarah. "We all have," Sarah replied. "That's what Guardians do." The morning intensified as more visitors arrived. VA officials toured the facility while Rex's crew circled the marina, their engines a reminder of lingering threats. Jake worked the phones, coordinating with other reformed clubs about security. "Got something to show you," Emma announced to the gathered crowd. She unveiled a wall of photographs, Coastal Guardians working with veterans, teaching kids, protecting waters. Each image told a story of transformation. "This is what they tried to destroy last night," Jake told the VA director, pointing to similar photos salvaged from the Wavebreakers clubhouse. "But you can't destroy change once it starts." Catherine watched her daughter lead a marine biology session, teaching kids about ecosystem protection. When did she get so strong? She wondered aloud. When she saw strength redefined, Razor answered, standing beside his ex-wife. When we all did. The media event began as planned, but with an unexpected twist. Instead of just Razor and Jake speaking, veterans and family members took the microphone, sharing stories of impact. Mrs. Chen described how the program had honored her husband's legacy. Mark demonstrated his adapted boat controls. Rex and his remaining crew watched from across the harbor, their numbers now down to 4. The contrast was stark, their anger against a backdrop of healing and hope. "You know what really kills them?" Jack observed. "We're stronger now than when we were." Feared. Real strength, not that fake tough guy act. Diana coordinated with veteran organizations, explaining their methods. "It's not just about boating," she emphasized. "It's about building bridges, healing divided communities through shared purpose." The day's tensions peaked when Rex finally made his move, roaring into the marina with his remaining loyalists. But instead of the chaos he'd planned, he found himself facing not just Coastal Guardians and Wavebreakers members, but dozens of veterans, family members, and community leaders standing united. "You look tired, Rex," Razor said quietly. "Tired of fighting against hope. There's still room for one more guardian." Rex's face twisted with conflicting emotions. Behind him, two of his remaining crew cut their engines, letting their Storm Runner flags fall into the water. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, it is." Catherine stepped forward. "Our daughter's Marine biology class. Your kids are in it, Rex. They're learning about protecting oceans while you're out here playing villain." The confrontation deflated as more cameras arrived, capturing not the violence Rex had planned, but his isolation. He roared away, with just one boat following, leaving behind a changed seascape. Inside the clubhouse, the VA director made an announcement. "We've seen enough. The Coastal Guardians program is exactly what veteran support services have been missing. We want to help you expand." The news created a buzz of excitement, but Razor held up his hand. "With respect, sir, we need to do this right. Keep it genuine, keep it local. Too big, too fast, and we lose what makes it work." "Which is?" the director asked. Emma answered from her marine biology corner. "Heart. You can't franchise Heart." The afternoon brought more changes. Catherine stayed, watching Razor and Emma work together with veteran families. The Wave Breakers clubhouse repairs began with Coastal Guardians and community members pitching in. "Remember our first date?" Catherine asked Razor during a quiet moment. "You taught water safety at the community college. You were so good with the students." "Lost my way for a while," Razor added. "Needed a submarine commander to remind me who I was." Sarah overheard and smiled, continuing to monitor radio channels with her usual quiet efficiency. The national media had tried to make her the star of the story, but she kept pointing them toward the veterans, the families, the real transformations. Anchor Point Marina had become an unofficial Coastal Guardians auxiliary, with Martha herself coordinating support services from behind the counter. "Got 3 more clubs calling," she reported. 2 from Georgia, 1 from South Carolina, all wanting to learn. "Tell them to send representatives next week," Diana suggested. "We'll do a proper training program. Show them it's not just about changing patches, it's about changing hearts." Anchor Point Marina buzzed with activity despite the early hour. Representatives from 10 boating clubs filled the docks, their jackets displaying a variety of Guardian patches. The regional conference was Razor's idea, a way to ensure the program's growth stayed true to its roots. "Check this out," Emma called from her usual corner, now dubbed the Marine Lab by regulars. She'd created an orientation packet for new chapters, each page illustrated with marine life, rising from different challenges. Veterans with PTSD, families dealing with loss, communities healing divisions. Every story had its own guardian. Catherine, who'd extended her stay in Seacliff Harbour, watched her daughter with growing pride. "She gets her teaching skills from you," she told Razor. "Remember that first safety class you taught? Feels like a lifetime ago." Razor replied, but his eyes showed appreciation for the memory. The man who had once led through intimidation now moved through the crowded marina, offering guidance, support, and his hard-earned wisdom about transformation. Sarah worked her usual morning shift, quietly observing the changes while monitoring radio channels. Diana had set up a command center at the dock office, coordinating with VA officials about expanding the program nationally. "Got a situation," Jack Torres interrupted, his face tense. "Rex was spotted at the old Storm Runners hangout. He's called in some hardcore cases from out of state. Looks like he's planning one last stand." The news rippled through the marina. The visiting club representatives straightened, old instincts rising. But Razor raised his hand for calm. "This is exactly the test we need," he announced. "Not just for us, but for every chapter watching how we handle it. We're not those people anymore." Jake, now fully committed to the Guardian program, stood beside his former rival. Already got calls from 3 of Rex's out-of-state contacts. They saw our veteran programs and want to learn more. Rex is fighting a losing battle. Outside, the first rumble of high-performance engines signaled Rex's approach, but the sound was thin, desperate. Just 3 boats instead of the army he'd promised. They pulled up outside the marina, Rex's face twisting as he saw the transformed, gathering through the clubhouse windows. "Time to finish this," Razor said quietly. He walked down the dock alone, leaving his guardian jacket on a piling. This wasn't about clubs anymore. Rex cut his engines, trying to project his old menace. "Brought some real riders," he growled, gesturing to his companions, "ones who remember what we're supposed to be." "And what's that, Rex?" Razor's voice carried across the water. "Angry? Afraid of change?" Look through the windows. Rex could see Emma teaching marine biology to a group of veterans' kids. Catherine sat with Mrs. Chen, planning a memorial regatta for fallen service members. Jake worked with Diana mapping out expansion plans. "You destroyed everything," Rex accused, but his voice cracked. "No," Razor corrected gently. "I remembered who I was. A teacher, a protector, a father. The destruction was what we were doing before." One of Rex's out-of-state allies walked past him, drawn to the activity inside. Through the window, he saw his own son's artwork on Emma's wall. The boy had been attending her marine biology classes in secret. "My kid drew that," he muttered, emotion cracking his tough facade. "All our kids are drawing guardians," Emma explained. "Drawing hope, drawing us as the protectors they know we can be." Catherine emerged from the clubhouse, standing beside Razor. "I left because I couldn't watch you destroy yourself," she told him, but loud enough for Rex to hear. "I came back because Emma showed me you'd found yourself again." Rex's remaining support crumbled as his last riders docked their boats, drawn by the energy of positive change. He stood alone on his vessel, his anger collapsing into despair. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know how to be anything else." "Yes, you do," Emma called out, crossing the dock with her marine biology book. "Found. These in my art box. Your daughters drew them last week." She showed Rex pictures of marine life protecting each other, each one labeled, "My Dad the Guardian." The veteran representatives watched from inside as Rex's transformation played out. On the dock, this wasn't just about one man's change. It was a blueprint for their own chapter's transformations. "See," Razor addressed the gathered leaders, "this is how we grow. Not through force, but through understanding. Not through fear, but through hope." The conference resumed with new energy. Diana presented expansion plans, while Sarah quietly ensured all radio channels stayed monitored. The VA officials took notes on the organic way the program handled conflict, impressed by the balance of strength and compassion. "We're going to need more space," Martha mused, watching her marina overflow with positive change. "Already handled," Jake announced. "Wave Breakers renovation is complete. We're turning it into the first Coastal Guardians training center, teaching everything from boat safety to marine conservation." Catherine pulled Razor aside as the excitement built. "I've been thinking about moving back," she said carefully. "Not for us, that chapter's closed. But for this, for what you've built here, Emma needs to be part of it." The afternoon sun painted Anchor Point Marina in warm light as the first official Coastal Guardians Regional Conference continued. Representatives from each chapter shared their community's unique challenges and solutions. Veterans spoke about finding purpose. Families discussed healing. Rex sat in a corner slip, his daughter studying marine biology beside him, his face showing the first hints of peace. The man who had fought change the hardest was finally letting his own guardian rise. The Coastal Guardians Training Center hummed with activity as representatives from 5 states gathered for certification. What had started in Seacliff Harbor was spreading, but growth brought its own challenges. Razor stood before the assembled group, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights spent ensuring they got this right. "It's not about the patches," he explained, gesturing to the Guardian emblems each trainee wore. "Anyone can sew on a patch. It's about understanding why we protect, and more importantly, how we help others protect with us." Diana worked the registration desk, processing applications from boating clubs across the country. Each folder told a similar story: communities divided, veterans struggling, people seeking the same transformation Seacliff Harbor had experienced. "Georgia chapters having problems," Jack reported, hanging up his phone. "Local marinas aren't accepting them, still see them as the old gang they used to be. That's why we're here," Catherine interjected. She'd taken on a role helping clubs navigate community resistance, drawing from Seacliff Harbor's experience. "Razor, they need you up there." But Razor was already dealing with issues in 3 other states. The program's rapid growth threatened to pull him in too many directions, away from the hands-on work that made it effective. "I'll go," Rex offered, surprising everyone. The former holdout had become one of their strongest advocates for change. "My story might help them understand. Sometimes the hardest critics just need to see what's possible." Emma's marine biology program had expanded too, with trained instructors now running sessions in multiple locations. Her conservation designs had become a symbol of hope recognized across the region, but success brought unexpected pressure. "Charleston chapter called again," Diana told Sarah during a quiet moment at the marina. "Their kids' program isn't working like ours. They want Emma to fly out and help." "She's 14, Catherine protested, overhearing. "We can't have her carrying that kind of responsibility." The morning's training session paused as Razor received urgent news. The South Carolina chapter had encountered resistance from a hardcore boating gang, leading to a confrontation that threatened to undo months of progress. "This is the test," Razor addressed the trainees. "Not just for them, but for all of us. How we handle this defines everything we've built." Jake, whose Wavebreakers transformation had become a model for other clubs, volunteered to head to Charleston. "Sometimes they need to hear it from someone who's walked the whole path," he explained. Mrs. Chen's veteran spouse support group had grown into a regional network she coordinated from the marina counter. "Got 3 more Gold Star families wanting to start chapters," she reported, "but we need more volunteer instructors for the safety programs." The pressure of expansion showed in small ways. Razor caught himself snapping at a new trainee, immediately recognizing the old anger trying to resurface. Sarah noticed quietly, bringing him coffee and perspective. "Remember why we started this," she said simply. "One vessel at a time, one change at a time." Catherine found Razor in the training center's office late that night, surrounded by reports from struggling chapters. "You're trying to carry too much," she observed. "Can't slow down," he replied, rubbing his tired eyes. "Too many people counting on this working." "Then we adapt," Emma announced from the doorway, her ever-present marine biology book in hand. "Look what the Georgia kids discovered today." She showed them pictures of marine ecosystems working together, supporting each other. "That's it," Razor realized, studying the research. "We're trying to navigate alone. Guardians sail in fleets." The next morning, Razor called an emergency meeting at Anchor Point Marina. Chapter representatives crowded the docks as he outlined a new approach. "We're changing the structure," he announced. "No more single leaders trying to handle everything. Each chapter needs a full Guardian team, veteran support, family services, community outreach, and safety training, all working together." Diana projected data showing how Seacliff Harbor's success came from collaboration, not individual efforts. "The Wavebreakers transformation worked because Jake shared leadership with his whole crew," Rex added. "Charleston's in trouble because they forgot it's about community, not control," As if to illustrate the point, the marina's morning rush arrived, veterans, boaters, families, and community members all mixing naturally. The harbour had become more than a meeting place. It was a model for what every chapter could achieve. Charleston doesn't need Emma, Catherine realized. They need to understand she created space for everyone to heal together. The training program restructured around this insight. Instead of trying to replicate Seacliff Harbour exactly, each chapter would adapt the Guardian principles to their community's unique needs. "Look at this," Mrs. Chen called out, showing Razor her tablet. The Georgia chapter had hosted a community cookout, inviting skeptical marina owners to meet their veterans and families. The South Carolina situation was calming, as Jake helped them refocus on service instead of confrontation. "We're not just training boaters anymore," Razor told the assembled leaders. "We're training communities how to rise together." Late that evening, as the training center quieted, Sarah found Razor sitting with Emma, helping her organize marine conservation materials for the expanded program. "Think we can handle this growth?" he asked Sarah. "Together," she replied, monitoring channels. With her usual quiet efficiency, that's what Guardians do. The challenges of expansion continued, but Seacliff Harbour had found its balance. Every setback became a lesson, every struggle an opportunity to demonstrate the power of unified transformation. As the sun set over the training center, Emma put the finishing touches on a new research project, a marine ecosystem thriving not through competition, but through cooperation. "That's us, isn't it?" Catherine asked, watching their daughter work. "That's who we're becoming," Razor corrected, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of hard-earned wisdom. "All of us protecting together."